with respect to a central digital bank currency. If I'm correct, right, was it in March, what year is this, 24? In March of 22, like 2 years ago, President Biden signed an executive order, right, exploring the pros, cons, benefits, the path forward or whatever on such a concept, right? So it's not without concern that this is something that's right in front of us as a nation, right? I would assume this is should be one of the less partisan things that we should be putting forward. That regardless of one's ideology or political bent, that the concept of any government being able to insert itself into the currency that is being used to carry out free enterprise between an American citizen and another American citizen engaging in commerce, and therefore then use the power of government to influence the choices in commerce beyond what we already do with respect to tax policy, with respect to other levers of governmental power, that is the genesis behind what we're trying to do here with prohibition. Mr. Hill, would you be able to expand on that a little bit? I know you said so in your opening statement, but I think it's really critical for people to understand. People always they always like try to kind of mock or laugh at the slippery slope arguments, and I've yet to have seen a slippery slope argument made over the last 20 years that hasn't roughly been correct for the most part. And so I would just suggest that if we go down the road of CBDC, that this government would be able to insert itself into policy choices on right and left, right? This money cannot be used for an abortion. This money cannot be used for a purchase of a gun. This money can be used only for charging a car versus buying gas, or this money can be used. Pick your ideological spectrum. It's happened in real time in other governments around the country, notably in China. I just wonder, again, if the gentleman from Arkansas would expand on that a little bit, because I think it's central to some of the concerns Americans have.
I thank the gentleman from Texas, and I don't share his affection for A&M baseball and the defeat of the Razorbacks over the weekend.
Two out of three, it is.
But I do share his concern over this particular notion, and I think that I make the following points. One, the ambiguity that somehow a central bank in our government could issue what we think is a retail central bank digital currency, which is where our citizens, our businesses would have accounts at the Fed and transact activity in the central bank digital currency, that could be done without a strict authorization oversight by Congress. That's point one where I agree with you. I think there's bipartisan opposition to that. And we've had bills on the floor. In fact, I've co-sponsored a bill with the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Auchincloss, in opposition to it, because under Article 1, it's quite clear that we are responsible for the money coinage and that we've delegated that to the Treasury, and the Treasury has got the Federal Reserve in a distribution fiscal agent status. Number two, I think people should be concerned about the potential of abuse in a situation like that for their privacy and their transactions. And why would they feel that way? I think because of the pattern and practice that they've seen over just the time I've served in Congress. Operation Choke Point, just to name one. So I think we want to make sure that we err on caution by prohibiting this and by saying, again, reiterating, it can't be done without authorization of the Congress. Third and final point. In my judgment, the current chairman of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, Jay Powell, agrees with that. But guess what? The comments have been ambiguous at the Fed and in the administration. And so I think it's important that Article 1, branch of the government, speak clearly here, and that's why I'm in favor of this bill, and I yield back to the gentleman from Texas.
I will, if in 1 second, if I can follow up and then open it up to the gentlelady. Unlike current dollars in circulation, now obviously we use credit cards, obviously we use Venmo, and let me just say that on Venmo, right? Are there not current efforts by the IRS to say transactions over a certain dollar amount, like $600, and Venmo should have greater scrutiny and greater, reporting and potential regulation? Is that not something that is happening in real time. And unlike, and then I'll add to that, you can answer that, unlike currency, to the extent we still use currency, that this has a digital tether, right? I mean, there is a connection, a connectivity in terms of what you're talking about in the currency. So putting aside the extent to which we've gone, heavily digital with respect to credit cards, you've got a one-to-one relationship with your credit card company and the systems in place, which of course are regulated. Here, when you go straight up to a currency with that kind of a tether, that there is really, to a significant extent, no real limit other than us on what the government can then do with that, whether it's freezing or seizing assets, with respect to as I was mentioning before, programming spending. And I might just say, like, when we talk about these items, you brought up Operation Choke Point. I would also say we saw a lot of these questions, again, without raising the issues of debates that unfortunately got somewhat partisan, but I think we had some agreement and disagreement during COVID. Well, the extent to which government power was being used to then effectuate what citizens could or could not do, would not such a currency give significant and greater power for the government to do that, regardless of the merits? Whatever one thinks about masks and vaccines, mandates, whether you can leave 6 feet circles, whatever the hell you want to go down the line of talking about with COVID, wouldn't such a mechanism provide a significant amount more power to the government to be able to effectuate the policies that were trying to be carried out during COVID? But the gentleman expand on those couple of questions, and then I'll turn it to the gentlelady.
Implemented at a retail level with direct accounts, it absolutely would. And I think people have a right, as I said, to be concerned about their privacy. That would be the ultimately non-private activity. And I'll give you one other more contemporary example rather than choke point, and that's a debate we've had in the House Financial Services Committee for several Congresses, but intensely last week when we supported a bill by Barry Loudermilk of Georgia on something called the Consolidated Audit Trail that collects everybody's stock trades every day in every brokerage account and are not protecting PII, the personal information associated with that. And it would allow someone to mix that with open source data and triangulate in another database for a hack that makes TikTok look benign. And so this risk is on the top of minds, I think, of the American people. And that's, again, why I think implemented as you describe it, yes, it should be of serious concern to our families for their privacy rights. And I think they have had examples recently, in our recent past, that would indicate the government's a terrible privacy protector. I'll yield back to the gentleman.
The gentlelady had wanted to make a comment.
Yes, thank you so very much. Currently, the Federal Reserve is engaged in a pilot project that looks at how distributed ledger technology can be used to improve efficiency of cross-border payments and settlements involving multiple currency. This is occurring in coordination with other G7 countries, which are also engaged in similar projects to speed up and lower the cost of doing business around the world. Furthermore, all G20 countries are doing the same, and making the United States the only country on the planet to ban a CBDC is just unthinkable. But let me repeat that the only country to prohibit a CBDC would be what Representative Emmer's isolationist bill would do in stopping this testing in its tracks. It would undercut America's commitment to its allies and seriously impair our ability to influence the standards adopted by other nations as we forge ahead with CBDC. All I'm saying is this, if I may, and that is, we don't want to be seen as a country that's not futuristic enough to at least look at it, to explore it, to test, to find out. Right now, we're the only country that is proposing, any of our members proposing a ban. All I'm saying is, let's not stop what the Fed is doing in trying to do the research.
So look, I appreciate the exchange with the gentlelady. Yes. I would make two comments. One, the idea that America being alone in choosing a path is probably, in my mind, a indication that that path might be a good one. That's just a personal observation. about the tendencies of our, of other countries around the world. And I kind of like it when America's thinking independently and trying to think about figuring out how we're going to preserve liberty and make sure that we don't have government control of currency. And I would note, and I say this as a positive, the gentlelady was on the floor when we were having a significant amount of debate in a hotly contested vote that I think I might have disagreed with some of my Republican colleagues on the panel about warrants as it related to FISA. And I would note a overall philosophy for me that I shared. The gentlelady made a comment on the floor saying, you said I'm old enough to remember, respectfully, I'm quoting you, old enough to remember J. Edgar Hoover. And you made the point on the floor about the extent to which the empowerment of government is concerning. And I would just note in this instance, where I might have had some disagreements with my colleagues on this side of the aisle and the other side of the aisle on that particular vote, you and I were aligned on that vote, I would just posit here for consideration that what we're doing here, what we're attempting to do, is to Congress speak up and say, no, you're not going to do this. You're not going to go empower government to be able to control a currency, foist it on the American people this way. And that does not foreclose continued debate, investigation, discussion about where that would go. We have plenty of committee hearings. We can have plenty of consideration. Fed can research whatever the hell it wants to research, but we can have a debate about this. But my only point is, I believe it is critically important that Congress speak to say that the power of government should not be used to allow government to be inserted between our use of currency and engaging in free enterprise. But with that, in the interest of time, I will yield back to the chairman.